A lot of people are going to be interested in the iOS 14 update. It took me a second to get there because that was at the very beginning of the presentation. They got all the iOS 14 stuff out of the way. Look, man, I'm done with the whole Apple versus Android thing. It's boring to me. This thing. I'm just looking at things in the world. I'm just a guy. Mm-hmm. I just see things. I'm curious in general. Ideally, if there's an idea that's better, everyone should adopt the idea. Mm-hmm. Let's look for the better or best ideas. So if they pulled certain ideas from Android, so be it. Ideas have been swapped back and forth.
For the sake of user experience.
Will he do?
Guess, right?
Will he do?
Yeah.
I don't mind, man. I can live with it. I understand you have patents and trademarks and the whole thing, and it can get out of hand real quick. And people spend a lot of time maybe on an exclusive feature to see it then show up in other platforms. But if you're talking about widgets or let's say having an app drawer or notifications, call notifications that don't take up the whole screen, if everybody on iOS tomorrow gets a better experience, I'm happy about it, period. Even though I don't currently have an iOS phone in my pocket. So the new features, iOS 14, the biggest deal they seem to make was around widgets and the app library. And the simplest way to think of the app library is kind of like what you have on Android. As opposed to swiping through a boatload of screens to get to where you want to go, you have this alternative. Now on Android, you can hit the app drawer and see all your apps there with a search bar at the top. Apple took it a step further from an organizational standpoint in allowing you to select based on its own sorting, its own neural. Everything's neural with Apple, but essentially it's some type of algorithmic sorting that's going to figure out what you probably want to open next based on your track record or what you were doing prior to that. And the benefit or the way Apple pitches their neural stuff is that it's on device. We don't have to reference some server somewhere. It's on your device. It's based on your personal behaviors, and that's it. That's the way they pitch it. So anyways, you can select based on their suggestions. That's the neural piece, recently added, or a series of automatically generated folders that are grouped by the style of an app, whether it happens to be games, social, things like this. People do this manually all the time, but there's a lot of messy phones out there, my friend. People, they don't bother. They just end up pages, stacked, games distributed throughout. Now, I'm going to be honest, okay? This is a positive development. I think it's going to be cleaner for a lot of people. I, even on Android, do not use the app drawer that way. If I have an app that I don't use on a frequent basis, I go straight to search. That's it. I just go straight into search and start typing the app. Could this be faster? Possibly, especially if that suggestion app section is bang on. If they know when I want to open something before I do, or if I swipe over there and I'm about to search in the search bar, but I see in the suggestion it's already there, that saved me. That could be a better implementation. Of course, this is the thing we're going to have to test out and see if it works that well. But I think, like I said, for a lot of people, this is going to be an improvement over what they currently have. The idea of swiping into eternity to the end of whatever 20 pages. And it's actually, I said to you when it came to widgets, wait, there's no widgets on iOS? Right? You remember that moment? I was like, wait, what are they doing with widgets? What? Or even this shocks me sometimes. I'm so used to interacting with iOS, I don't even think about the fact that the average person with, 100 apps installed is swiping for days if they don't want to use search. So yeah, an app library, whatever you want to call it, it's going to help people immediately. So the other piece is widgets, and they're going to let you really customize your desktop experience with widgets now and alter your home screen in a way that hasn't existed in the past. You can take widgets, make them different sizes, whether it's weather, your calendar, a stock widget, clock widget, could be a photos widget. You can maneuver everything around, get all creative with it. A lot of people, enthusiasts, like to create your environment on Android right now is the whole thing. You're so proud of it. I mean, you walk into work, check out, look, I changed something. I'm like, Will, I'm busy over here. I'm doing the thing. I'm on a phone call. I changed something. Na boo boo. That's what Will does to me. But he's got the launchers going. And of course, on Android, it's incredible configuration, customization available to you. Apple going a bit into this direction here. And it's not a one-to-one thing. I should be clear. On Android, it's not system level to the same degree. You see some widgets or the scaling it could be a little wonky at times. Look, I got an Android phone in my pocket. Chill out, Android people. I got an Android phone in my pocket. But when Apple integrates something, it tends to expedite the adoption of the concept because they have so much ecosystem control, hardware, software control, that their implementation is just more strictly governed.
Yes.
And therefore, the experience to the end user is more predictable in most cases, having to map only to a handful of hardware, which you're responsible for. So it's cool if more people end up using it. My favorite widget that they showed off of the bunch was the dynamic one, which was going to guess based on time of day and your past behaviors what to show in that top bar. They showed off how early in the morning, maybe you're going to see the news because you probably check the news early in the morning. Then midday, that would switch over to calendar. Later in the day, possibly your activity report, or they're calling it fitness now, the fitness portion of their app. I like that because it's kind of preemptive. The preemptive computing stuff or the guesswork that the computer's doing on my behalf, that always turns me on a little bit. It gets me going a little bit.
The algorithms?
Yes. I mean, weird things will get you going. That'll get me going because it's anywhere where there's an improvement to your life where you had limited or no input. Because you're already struggling with the bandwidth and all the rest of it. Modern day 2020 human being. Good Lord. You know, the pace of things, it's outpacing your own hardware. Will, I hate to break it to you. Talk about your biological hardware.
I need an upgrade.
Whatever you got going on. Whatever you got going on. Anyway, so widgets were the big story. Widgets and the app library as far as iOS 14 is concerned. They also talked a little bit about messages. They made a few changes to how messages work. You can now do inline replies only to certain members within the group. Of course, I immediately started thinking, well, to get all these rich features, you have to be in iMessage. And I have something against iMessage. I'm just going to say it. Because the idea of a messaging platform that is enhanced based on hardware selection, it just feels a little dark to me. I got to say it. Particularly when, for the most part, that ecosystem tends to be an expensive one to enter. And I've read all the stories on the various bullying and negative behaviors that go on around the colors of people's bubbles. You see what I'm saying here? So anyway, I have to admit, as great as iMessage is as a messaging service, I feel like messaging services, particularly from a leader like Apple, and I know it won't happen, but if it's so great, if it's so good, if it's the best messaging app on the planet, put out an Android app. Put iMessage on Android and let everybody use it and have whatever color bubble they want. But of course, you got to sell the phones. And I guess on some level, you know, people will pay for their bubbles. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
So it's part of the whole structure of their business. It's how they make money. It's how they take that money and reinvest it into more hardware, software integrations, getting back to the A-series chip from earlier that I talked about. They have to make these profit margins. There's no other company like them, right? There's no other company that keeps it fully integrated that we're aware of in this day and age, and it's an expensive endeavor. It's a profitable endeavor, but it's an expensive endeavor. So I get why they do it, but I'm going to keep something against it for that purpose alone. I met so many people, they say, I'm locked in. I say, why are you locked in? iMessage. There's nothing locking people like iMessage. But anyway, new features for those that are locked and loving that lifestyle, that's fine too. It works really well. I totally appreciate that. For those that are locked in, you're going to get access to these much better and more rich group chats, which is what all the youngsters are up to, Will. I hate to break it to you.
the chats of the
Yeah,
groups.
I know you're out of the loop when it comes to that,
Very.
but I let you off the hook because you and I were a couple of old men in this game.
Mm-hmm.
We're the old, we're the old wise men, though.
Geezers.
Yeah, we're the old geezers. That might be a bit rude.